Every year, we see a few players make the jump to an NBA All-Star. We saw it a few years ago with Lauri Markkanen making the unexpected jump to NBA All-Star starter. But this year, I feel like there are 5 players that deserve to be in the conversation for being first-time All-Stars. We're going to be talking about that, some other NBA news. But before we do that, let's jump into an NBA Hoops grid. All right, so when we first pull up this Hoops grid, there's a lot of them that have Jazz players. I'm a really big Jazz fan, so I think this should be pretty easy. I'm going to do the ones that stick out pretty quick. This one, there's a couple players I can think of. Let's see, we could do Rudy Gobert. Okay, that's 18%. We could do Mike Conley. Okay, that one's worse, actually, which is surprising. I thought Gobert would be a more common one. Let's go Vanderbilt. There we go. Ooh, he's 3%. The other one I'm thinking of is Beasley. Okay, hey, that's the lowest one. I don't think you can get much lower than 2%. I think that's a pretty good start. The next one, Jazz and Lakers player. We could do Vanderbilt for this one. Let's switch. Let's do this real quick. See if we can make it better if we do Vanderbilt here, and then we do Beasley here. Well, that didn't switch it, but we're just going to leave it like that. We got Vanderbilt, and we also got Beasley, which is a pretty good one so far. To round off the Heat one, there's a current Jazz player that's on the Heat right now. Alec Burks was drafted to the Jazz. Hey, that's probably one of the best ones I've ever had. Those are all under 6%, which is pretty good. Right here, I'm just going to go Jimmy Butler. I feel like that one's super common. I honestly don't know who else that could be off the top of my head, but that's who we're going to run with. We're going to run with Jimmy Butler. Can you do Jimmy Butler? Can you do the same player twice? Jimmy Butler? Nope. Okay. Okay, let's go Kyle Lowry. All right. We can do Rondo right here. 26% or Shaq. Hey, Shaq's lower. That's surprising. I thought Rondo would be a much lower percentage than Shaq is, but we'll take that. This is where it starts to get hard. Heat and Celtics. Okay, I don't know how I didn't think of this. This one right here, Heat and Celtics. This one should be obvious. Ray Allen. Perfect. Kevin Garnett. Boom. And then for the Sixers and Lakers, that's a tough one. I got one. I finally thought of one. Sat here for 2 minutes thinking, but we could do Dwight Howard. Let's see what our final score is. All right, so it looks like our final score is 149. It's better than 53% of grids. I don't know how you could get much better than this. We had 2 silvers and 2 golds. I honestly can't think of any other players. I sat here for a minute trying to figure out who I could replace. This is what I came up with. If you guys do it yourself, drop it down in the comments what your score was, or send me a DM on Instagram. But I think that's the end of this segment. Let's jump right over to what we're here for, talking about first-time All-Stars. This season, I feel like there's a lot of players that could be in consideration for being an All-Star. I feel like there's about 10 players that are playing on the level that could be an All-Star, but I narrowed it down to about 5 players that I thought were deserving of this conversation. And the first player I thought of was Cade Cunningham. The Pistons last season were by far the worst team in the whole league. They had 14 wins last season. This far, halfway into the season, they already have 22 wins. They're above 500, and they're looking to compete for a play-in spot or a playoff spot this season. That's been a big part to Cade Cunningham. This season, he's averaging, almost 25 points, 7 rebounds, and just under 10 assists a game, which is pretty big improvement. And I feel like the main way that improvement came was because of the spacing. Last year, it was really easy for teams just to double team Cade Cunningham because, he'd pass the ball and, there was no one that could score the ball. He would drive, they'd collapse, he'd kick it out, and he didn't have any shooters. This season they added a whole bunch of players. They added Beasley, who's a 40% three-point shooter, Tobias Harris, who's a respectable three-point shooter, and he can get you a bucket when you need it. So I feel like that's part of the reason why Cade Cunningham made this jump. I feel like he could have made this jump last year. He just didn't have the help around him. So he was the first player that came to my mind of players that deserve to be an All-Star. Him and this other player, I feel like are 2 locks. At the very end, I'm going to give 3 locks of players that I feel like deserve it and 100% should be in the All-Star game. But he was one of the first players that came to mind. The other one that is coming to my mind next is Victor Wembanyama. This is probably the first player most people think of when they think of, first-time All-Star. He's, 7'4". He's leading the league in blocks. He's averaging almost 25 points a game like Cade Cunningham, 11 rebounds, and almost 4 assists a game. And he's just the type of player you want, in the All-Star game. He's a player that has a super high ceiling. So for him being only in his second year, being able to make this All-Star game, or should make this All-Star game, I'm just going to say now, he's going to make the All-Star game. But this type of player is the type of player the NBA needs, because he's going to be a player that not only makes it once or twice, he's going to be able to make the All-Star game if he's healthy, 10, 12, 13, however many years he's in the league, he'll make the All-Star game, it seems like, with, how good of a player he is. So for him getting into the All-Star game after his second year, helping the Spurs to make big improvements, they're another team that's fighting for that play-in spot. They're in the range in the hard West to be able to make either the play-in or a playoff spot if they keep winning at this rate, which is big improvement last year because they were a team that you saw the improvement, but this year they made the jump. They showed the league that they're a respectable team, that they're a team that you have to come out every single night, and that's due to Victor Wembanyama, especially with him being able to knock down the threes. At the beginning of this season, he was getting a lot of hate and criticism for taking 5, 6, 7, 8 threes a game. But the thing is, now that he's knocking down those shots, which was their goal all along, if he can make those shots, it opens the court so much more. If you have a 7'4" player that can dominate inside and outside, it makes it so it's nearly impossible for a defense to strategize of what to do for this team. I think he's one of the obvious answers of who should be a first-time All-Star this year, and he has a lot more coming for him. The next 3 players are players that I think are deserving, but part of the reason why they're deserving is because how well their teams are doing. Coming into this season, if you would have told me that the Houston Rockets were going to be, the second seed like they are right now, they're 28-14, which is second in the West, I would have probably told you you're crazy. And this is coming from someone that really enjoyed watching them last year. And specifically this player I'm going to talk about is a player that I've really enjoyed. You could argue either, Sengun, or you could also argue Jalen Green. And Green has been on an absolute tear of recent. He just had a 40-point game. But the player I ended up going with was Alperen Şengün. I'm a really big Şengün fan. I think he's a baby Jokic. He's one of those centers that, he can score inside. He's a big player. He's able to get in the post and throw his weight around. But he's also a player that can, stretch the floor. He has really good passing ability. So obviously he's not on the same level as Jokic, who's averaging, like a 30-point triple-double, it feels like. But he's a player that's putting up, 20 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists, which is really good for a big man. And I think he's very deserving of it. This team has made a jump from, being, I think, the 11th seed last year, missing the play-in just barely. I think the Warriors were right above them, but they just barely missed the play-in last year, and now have made a jump all the way to the second seed, going from 11 to 2. It's pretty incredible. And, obviously they deserve an all-star, but it's kind of hard when they have a couple players that are all about the same level. But I think, LP is very deserving of this. And kind of leading to the next one is 2 more players that I feel like benefit from how well their team is doing. But these 2 players, it's going to be a lot harder for them to make it in just because they already have other all-stars in their team. The next one I'm thinking of is from the Cavs. Evan Mobley, he's made that jump this season. He's averaging, 19, 9, and 3. And then he's also one of the best defenders in the entire league. But his team, they're on pace for 70 wins this season. They're 36-6. But the only problem is Donovan Mitchell's a lock to be an all-star. Darius Garland has made a bounce-back season, has a very strong argument for becoming an all-star. So it's not very likely that all 3 of them would make it. So I think it's either, Evan Mobley makes it or Darius Garland makes it, or maybe they just have one. But I feel like Evan Mobley should be in this conversation, especially with their team, being on pace for 70 wins, being the best seed in the Western Conference, and he's made a big jump, and he's been a big part of that. He's been able to knock down 3-pointers this year, which has really opened up the floor, especially since they run the 2-center lineup with him and Jared Allen. But the other player I was thinking of as well, kind of the same situation, not as bad as what Evan Mobley is with having other all-stars on his team, but I was thinking of Jalen Williams. You know, J-Dub is also part of a team that's 35-7, on pace for 70 wins also, or right around that area. But the only problem is, you know, the NBA is so deep right now. It's hard for teams to get 2 All-Stars. It feels like you have to have like a LeBron and AD, or a Devin Booker and a Kevin Durant to be able to get 2 All-Stars. But the thing, both those teams, you know, they get 2 All-Stars every single year. And both those teams are, you know, just barely in the playoffs or in the play-in. I think the Suns are right around 500. Last I looked, they were exactly 500. So they're getting 2 All-Stars. And, you know, the Thunder are the best team in the Western Conference. Like I said before, on pace for 70 wins. But it's going to be hard for them to get 2 All-Stars. Shea's a lock, just like Donovan Mitchell's a lock. But I'm hoping players like Jalen Williams can make that jump. And it seems like maybe he won't make it from the initial voting, which I'm hoping he does. But it seems like there's always injury replacements. And if he can't make it in from the original voting or the coaches voting or whatever it is, hopefully he can make it in from like an injury replacement or something, because I think he's very deserving. But like I said, I was going to choose 3 locks. The 3 locks I have, I think, is Victor Wembanyama, lock, Cade Cunningham, lock. And then looking at these 3 other players, the player I'm going to lock in is Sengun. I think Sengun's one of, you know, the best centers in the league. He's going to be the only All-Star from his team, which is a super high seed. And that's why I'm picking him over players like Evan Mobley or Jalen Williams. That's all for this video today, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.